the Grimm 12-gauge shotgun, a new shotgun that was added along with the Alaskan Deal map. This comes in a single secondary as well as an Akimbo primary. That's right, we now have Akimbo shotguns. So for the majority of today, I'll be discussing the Akimbo version of the gun since not only is it more interesting, but I also think that it's more viable than the single version. So here's a look at the stats of both of the guns. Whoa, wait a minute, 18 damage? I'm pretty sure that makes it literally the weakest weapon in the whole game. Hell, the money bundle itself does 30 damage. Well, there must be some viability to it. I mean, I am using these guns on 1 down difficulty in the gameplay. So I guess first off, let's talk a bit about my setup that I got going on here. As you saw earlier from the stats, this gun sports really low damage. But that's really the only downside, just taking a glance at it. It has a fairly large pool of ammo, an okay fire rate, and best of all, pretty good concealment. So I went with most of the damage boosting skills I could get for the setup. Shotgun CQB for more damage, Overkill for more damage after your first kill, Specialized Killing for increased damage with silencers, and then crits. For the ammo in the gun, I'm using Triple Op Buck for, increased damage. But even after that, it's still a fairly weak weapon, so I opted to go for all of the magazine and ammo related skills as well. Akimbo Ace for extra Akimbo ammo, Close By Ace for a much needed larger magazine, and everything else for my build, it's just useful stuff for 1 down, or stuff to help out with shotguns and concealment. So I've modded these weapons for straight concealment with a Silent Killer Suppressor, a Concealment Boost, and the little brother Foregrip. So after all that, the stats will now look like this. And I'll leave a link to the full build in the description. Honestly, it doesn't look so bad anymore. Considering that these are Akimbo weapons, and with how Akimbo weapons work in this game, you can almost consider the actual damage to be double what the stats show. So all in all, it's not actually that bad of a setup. Is it a super specific and incredibly dedicated setup just to make these guns viable for 1 down? Yes, definitely. And while one can argue that it's not really worthwhile since you'll get way more mileage out of the other shotguns, at least it's not useless. Due to the way the base stats are, it's got a lot of versatility with building around it. I did say I went for most of the damage stuffs, but one of the main things that I didn't go for was Berserker from Fugitive, which increases the damage potential of all ranged weapons incredibly as long as they have low health. Unfortunately, while having Berserker on this setup would make the guns absolutely monsters, it would mean I'd have to skip out on a lot of the other skills that are much more helpful for the team, and I'd have to completely shift around my build to make it work with a really low health setup. But, the option is still there. If you wanted to go with a heavier setup and rely on modding the guns with a larger magazine and make use out of Berserker, I could totally see that working. And while the guns are definitely usable on 1 down, there's a few things I'd like to note about them. Most of the setups that require the overkill damage proc from Enforcer, you're going to have a really hard time getting the first kill. Unless you get lucky with crits, you're going to spend a lot of ammo just on 1 enemy sometimes, so make sure you're prepared for that. The larger magazines that I picked up with the skills, they'll definitely help out with this, and so will the extra ammo from the Akimbo skill. And speaking of ammo, the other big downside of this gun that you won't see from the stats is that for some reason, the Akimbo version of the shotguns have really bad ammo pickup. Like, the single is amazing, as you'd expect, but the Akimbo leaves something to be desired. You'll probably see often in the video that unless I grab ammo from an ammo bag, I'm constantly sitting around with only 1 or 2 extra mags. So unless you have a really good secondary to help out, or someone dedicated to bringing ammo bags all the time, you're gonna be in a world of hurt. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but that is probably the biggest downside of the weapon. I mean, to be fairly honest, the low damage actually didn't turn out to be the most annoying thing. It was pretty fun making a more creative build to work around with the shortcomings. But bad ammo is a really difficult thing to work with on all weapons. Other than that, there isn't too many actual downsides to the weapons. I guess the only other thing is just the low accuracy, but for a shotgun build, that's not a super bad thing unless you want really good range. And if you did want really good range, I'd just recommend one of the stronger shotguns like the double barrels, the lever action shotgun, the Judge. What these shotguns shine in is just pure overbearing gunfire. Like I said, it is still a weak weapon, so you'll have to rely on crits and overkill proc damage a lot. But one of the things I noticed while using it is that even if you can't outright kill enemies, it does a really good job of crowd controlling them. The sheer volume of fire tends to stagger a lot of enemies. Basically, anything that isn't immune to stun will probably stumble if you hit them enough. And the fact that you have 2 shotguns, both with mediocre accuracy, means that you'll be scoring a lot of collateral hits. Again, you won't be outright killing the enemy, but being able to hit lots of them and making them all stumble is going to be really helpful. Overall, I was kind of surprised with the Akimbo shotguns. They were a lot more fun to use than I expected. I mean, when people wanted Akimbo shotguns, and they wanted something like, oh, give me some overpowered Akimbo judges. When are we gonna get some Akimbo LMGs and miniguns, and when we get RPG dolls for I think it's so funny. Yeah, of course, the reality is they wouldn't make it as good as we'd hope. Kind of like the Akimbo revolvers, you know? I'm still super salty, there's no way to change the fire mode into 1 click for 1 shot instead of 1 click for 2 shots. The Akimbo revolvers are just stupid otherwise. But yeah, you know, they're decent weapons, and the fun factor is definitely there. Just don't expect to rock everyone's socks off with it. Something I also remember to mention is, I definitely wouldn't recommend using this for bulldozers. They're just pretty shitty at taking away the faceplate, and they're gonna burn through ammo really fast if you try to kill one without using other weapons. So, I guess the last thing I should talk about is the single version of this gun, the single secondary. It was pretty clear that when they made this thing, it was for the purpose of being used akimbo. The single is just way too weak, and there's literally no reason to use the Grimm over any of the other secondaries now. I mean, the other secondaries, sure, it may be a little stronger, may have a little less ammo, but things like the Street Sweeper still has really good ammo pickup. You know, things like the Judge and Locomotive, they can sustain themselves, so it's not a huge issue. The only thing I could really see people using it for is to do hard CC with HE rounds and Dragon Breath rounds. With HE rounds, it would be super weak, but it would still be able to stumble enemies a lot if that's what you're going for. The Dragon's Breath rounds is probably the only way to make the secondary version a viable gun for 1 down difficulty. You'll have both the ability to CC enemies by setting them on fire, as well as a little bit more killing potential from the fire dot damage itself. And while it may be weak, you have a ton of ammo with really good pickup that you can treat kind of like a long-range flamethrower. So, it is what it is, but I don't really like the secondary that much. I do enjoy the Akimbos though, because they are pretty fun.